Is anyone on? Oh, Levi's on. Let's pin you.
Thank you very much.
It's a special schus. It is enabling people to have it, to be able to hear, to learn. After that, Baba Modalef. Since we were talking about Chometz, which was owned by a goy, and a yid takes responsibility, which is like almost like a joint ownership, we're going to continue talking about similar kinds of shilas, but not agabe Chometz. We'll talk about now B'choy. One of the interesting halachas of B'choy is that if you have an animal which 100% belongs to a yid, but just the ear belongs to a goy, then if the animal has a firstborn, instead of the animal firstborn, which is normally a B'choy, it's not a B'choy. We learned it in B'choyvus. That's why, for example, in Kimimios, they have a whole system that whenever they get an animal, they sell a tiny bit of it to a goy, in order that what? That the firstborns should not be Kaddish. Now, there was a tax, 10% tax, on all animals which were born. So the question is, so the question is, this is quite cool, the way the Mephosh explain it, is pshat that the king gets 10%. Is pshat is like this, that he gets 1 out of 10, but that's the only one that he owns. But the other 9 he has got no connection to. Or do we say no? He has a 10% right in all of them, and then what happens is he takes the one that is like Tmurah instead of the 10% he has in each one. So Gemara says, if you can pay in cash and not have to give the animals away, and of course you have because at the end of the day, it's not an ownership in the animal, it's just a financial burden. When you can't pay with cash, you have to give the animal money. You don't have to give. There, we're talking about a situation where you can pay with cash. So again, if you can pay with cash, it's only a financial cost. It's not an ownership in the animal. So then you have to pay for b'chayah. But when one of the 10 animals is definitely going to go to the king, since the king has got some right in the animals, it's as if he's got a partnership. A partnership with a goy makes it that an animal which is born is not considered the firstborn from a yid, because it says, the Pasuk says, it has to be from Klal Yisrael, not something which belongs partly to a goy. Ikadami, some have a different version, slightly more common. Even if you can pay him with money, since in the end of the day, the first right that the king has is on the animal itself, so therefore he's considered an owner, part owner of the animal, even though really you could just pay him off with money. But the same situation exactly, but with dough. That means the king gets 10% of everybody's doughs. Even though you can't get rid of him, because the only way you can do it is give him the dough, you can't give him cash. My time, what's the logic? You just said that by animal, your potter always. Why would I do it b'chayv always? What says Bema is the color? Is the less the color? Meaning like this, by an animal, everybody knows this tax. It's a famous tax because they see all these animals, 10% of the animals going off to the king. What they do, for some reason, it wasn't well known. Since it wasn't well known, so if they see you taking a dough and not giving a challah to the kohen, they'll wonder themselves, why not giving a challah to the kohen? And people will think, so we're not mechuyev to give challah. And because of that problem, so therefore, it's mitzvah bonon that you chayav challah. So therefore, I saw Rashi writes, obviously you can't use this challah for other challah. For example, you've got 2 doughs, one which has got anuna, which is not got anuna. You have to be careful because it's only chayav mitzvah bonon. It's not a real chiyuv. Be'emes minateh, you're completely bottom. It's only mitzvah bonon because of the fact that people don't see the king taking his percentage. It's not so well known. So they wanted people to see that you're taking challah, because otherwise they'll think to themselves that you're pot from challah. Yes, it's clear. Not if I'm going too fast. Yeah.
Is it not like you're not allowed to have a b'chayr? You're allowed to if you want.
What?
Let's say even by when he takes.
Is there a problem in makdish chulin azor? But b'challah you don't have that problem as well. All you're doing is giving it to the kohen to eat. The Pasuk Rashi says that we so seichem your dough la'afuke goy's dough.
It's not issa to give.
Yeah, it's not this. Not issa to give. New topic. A guy comes into Yiddish Achatza or b'tzeiku b'yodeh with his dough in his hand. We talked about this yesterday. Pieces of his sandwiches. You do not need to get rid of it. If kidduy etzloi zokik levayr, if he gives it to you to look after, then you have to get rid of it. Yichid lo bayis. But if you set aside the house, that's Now the question is, lo yimotze, we said, is always the more machmir, because the motze doesn't say lecha. It says lo yimotze, it mustn't be found. So this price, even though the halacha is understandable, 3 halachas. Halacha number 1 is if it comes into there's a sandwiches, you don't have to get rid of it. But if he asks you to look after it, then you have to get rid of it, because now you're a shomer. And if you give him his own room or his own cupboard, then you don't have to get rid of it. All the halachas make sense. But the problem is, the mekoyad one is, shenema lo yimotze, because the Torah says lo yimotze. Lo yimotze was a pasuk which seems to say you mustn't have any kind of chametz. That is a lo yolachol, that pasuk. We could understand the Vaisa. The Vaisa used the pasuk lo yimotze. So if we more, Mike Oma, what's the continuation of lo yimotze? Oma papa veisha koma, va'achi koma. If kido etz lo yizokik nevaysh lo yimotze. It's going back on the second halacha, the chumrah, that if it asks you to look after it, you have to get rid of it and you have to burn it. Why? Why should I have to burn it? Because the Torah says, you mustn't be found by you, mustn't exist by your chametz. And once it's asked you to look after it, so therefore it's now considered to be by you. So therefore that's what pshat in the Bais. And not pshat in the Bais is going on the last halacha, where you should give him his own room, then it's okay. It's going on the second halacha, where he asks you to look after it, it's not okay. That we see from the pasuk of lo yimotze. Rashi Amar Leila Maseifi Koi Ba'ochi Koma Yichid Lebayis and Zok Levai Shenema lo yimotze beboteichem. It mustn't be in your homes. V'hai lavti dehu. It's not your house. Denochri ki kame'ai lebesis nafshei kame'ai. When he brings it in, he's bringing it into his own house. Meaning like this, that when you give him his house, what you're saying to him is, this is not your house. This is your house. And therefore, let's say you say to him, look, you have to put it into this cupboard. So therefore, now the reason why it's okay, because the Torah says, "Limotzi bevoteichem," in your homes. This is not my home anymore. If you say to a guy, this cupboard is for you, even though you've not made any kinyonim, almost anything else, you've now established this as house, and therefore it's a kul. But Rashi and the Papa are not arguing in halachas. They all agree to the 3 halachas of the Brisa. Right? Let's get that if a guy comes with his sandwiches, it's okay. If you ask him to look after it, it's not okay. But if you give him his own house, it is okay. They only argue, what do we darshan from lo yimotze? Are we darshaning lo yimotze a chumrah, that if you look after it, it's no good, or a kula lo yimotze beboteichem, in your home, so if you give him your own house, it's okay. Says the Gemara, remember the schirus kanya? Does this seem to tell you that schirus is good enough? That means the fact that we say lo yimotze beboteichem tells you that it's not my house. Why? Because I told him it's his. Is a right that if I rent you a property, that property is no longer considered to be mine at all. It's as if it's completely yours. For Tanan, we've learned in the Mishnah, there's a big halacha that you're not supposed to give a goy a property in Eretz Yisrael. There's a machrikas, or you're even allowed to rent him a goy. You're allowed to rent him a property in Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara brings there's a couple of shittas, and the Gemara there says that there are 3 levels. And Eretz Yisrael, everybody agrees it's also to rent. In Chutz La'aretz, there's some say you're allowed to. In Surah, which was a special in between place, is a machrikas tanoim if you're allowed to rent to a goy. Now says the Mishnah, even in the case where you're allowed to rent to a goy, but not that he should be able to live there. Why? They put avodah zarah inside it. What do I care that he puts his avodah zarah inside? It's not my house. So why are we here by Chomas? Are we saying that's okay? And by avodah zarah, we're saying it's not okay. It has to be found. The fact that the Torah said the words lo yimotze, lo yimotze doesn't just mean exist. Lo yimotze means there has to be found. It has to be accessible. And therefore, once you've rented it to the goy, once you've given over the property to the goy, it's no longer lo yimotze. And that's the difference between avodah zarah and chometz. Because once you rent a property, so why is there a problem? Is because even though, what's the problem? The answer is that when you rent out a property, the person who's got it's only got kinyan peiros. It's only got a kinyan to use the property. You still have some sort of, might tell you some English legal law. Freehold, you've got some rights to it. You have some rights to it, right? If you rent out a property, you have some rights. And now he's going to pick up a design into the house. That's a problem. By chometz, since the Torah used the word lo yimotze, we're more maker that if you rent out your property to a goy, he's allowed to keep his chometz there over Pesach, but he's not allowed to bring this away to right. Oh my good Amarav. If you find chometz in your house in Yom Tov, you put a bowl over it. Now, Says Rashi. This is a very, very famous Rashi. I know we're rushing, but I just want to see this Rashi. Mechaber mentions this Rashi. You can't take it out. Why? Because it's muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Why is chametz not a muktzah? Muktzah machmas gufoy. You can't use it. You're not going to be able to say baliro. Why? Because you already did bitter. So why do I need to bother covering it? The only thing you need to do is cover it to the bowl. But there's no chashash. There's no way to baliro. So what would happen if a person forgot to do bitter? And then he came to Yom Tov. If he didn't do bitter, he checked so well, he thought it's not necessary to do bitter. And then in Maisa, his bad luck, there was chametz in the house. What would he do?
Muksa's drabonon.
Yeah, it's much worse because Rashi says putting a bowl over it is okay because you're not being over this of baliro or balimotza. But over here, this person did not do bitter. Since he did not do bitter, so maybe we should allow him to take it out in order to be over Issa Muktzah Drabonon to save himself from an Issa Deraisa or baliro balimotza. So the Mishnah Berurah discusses this Shaila Mamish. The Mishnah Berurah says that whatever you do, we can't shout at you because there's such a big machlekes Shini over here. And he mentions this Rashi. Mentions this Rashi that from this Rashi it's muchach that if you did not do bittul, Rashi would hold you're allowed to take it out, and we don't care about Issa Muktzah. Why? Because he says that. Right. Okay. So we'll see. There's more numbers to it. So it's asakasha that lachatchila we're not supposed to move things for something else. Let's example, you got a phone on the floor, expensive smartphone, let's say, or you're allowed to take a ball and put it on top of it in order that your children shouldn't damage it. So we had it more in Shabbos. You're only allowed to move something for something which is mutter. So why over here is a mutter? So Tosfos says over here we're allowing you an issa d'rabbanan in case you might come to eat it. Okay. The Ma'is said this is a big machlekes. This is machlekes to show him as to what to do if you find chametz in your house and you did not do bitter. In that situation, you didn't do bitter. If it belongs to hekdesh, don't need to. People are scared of hekdesh and they won't come to eat it anyway. This is not on Yom Tov. And Rashi says if it would be on Yom Tov, you wouldn't be allowed to make a mechitza because not allowed to build on Yom Tov. We're talking about Erev Yom Tov, a guy came to your house and you did not promise to look after it, because if you promise to look after it, you won't be allowed to have it in your house. But rather, he asked you, can you mind for leaving? Let's say nowadays, sometimes people sell chametz. So what happens is, they leave it in the cupboard. You have to make sure that there's a mechitza, there's a barrier between you and the chametz, in order to remind yourself that you're not going to eat it. You don't have to. So if you've got chametz in your house of hekdesh, you do not need to even make a wall behind it.
No, you're right.
There's nobody wrong. Person leaves 30 days before Pesach. Does not need to be a chametz. Has to be a chametz. If within 30 days he's leaving and he's planning to come back on Pesach, then he has to be a chametz. If he's not going to come in for Pesach, even if he leaves just a week before Pesach, he does not need to do bir chametz. So says to me, if he's planning to come back on Yom Tov, and Rashi explains, let's say a person goes away on Rosh Hashanah, and he's 6 months before Pesach, and then he comes back on Pesach. If he didn't do bir chametz before he left on Rosh Hashanah, he'll come home on Pesach and find a nice slice of bread there, or piece of cake. And what he might do is might come to eat it. So how can you say that just because you left more than a month before Pesach, you don't have to do bir chametz? What are you going to do about the chametz in your house? So therefore, either one, you need to do bir. If you leave before 30 days without intention of coming back, you have to do bir chametz. Or if you leave before 30 days with intention to come back, you have to do bir chametz. If let's say you've got bir chametz and you start piling on it loads of stuff, if you're planning to clear all the rubble away on Pesach, you also have to do bir before 30 days. Basically, if you're going to get access to this chametz, even if it's 1/3 days before Pesach, when you leave it, it's still a problem. So therefore, you have to make sure that these people leave before Pesach, a week before Pesach, to go to England, let's say, living there and so on, they've got mitzvah bir chametz because then they say 30 days. And if you're planning to come to your house, even if you're only planning not being there for months, you have to do bir chametz before. What's the idea of 30 days? There's a mitzvah 30 days before Pesach to learn the halachas of Pesach. It's 2 weeks. My time of the Tanakama. What's the sort of the Tanakama that it's 30 days? Top of the page. Pesach Rishon, the matter of Pesach Sheni, in Pashas Ba'alois Chabishabdu told them by Pesach Rishon the halachas Pesach Sheni. Shalem Avayas B'Yisrael says Pesach B'Moradoi. Uksiva Yanoshim Ashayu Tumim Lenefesh Adam. They're all Tomei, and therefore he told them that because you're Tomei, you have to keep Pesach Sheni. Pesach Rishon, Pesach Sheni is 30 days. Since he was teaching them the halachas of Pesach Rishon, that's why he told them Pesach Sheni, not because there's a mitzvah 30 days before. In fact, the Mephoshim ask a bigger question. That he taught them in halachas of Pesach Rishon. They came to him and said to him, well, Tommy, what should we do? And they said to him, do Pesach Sheni. It's mashma that they not come to him to told him that they're Tommy. They wouldn't have been the halachas of Pesach Sheni. Masho asks this kasha. He says that Moshe Rabbeinu could have just told them there's a concept of Pesach Sheni without teaching them the details of Pesach Sheni. The fact they taught them the details of Pesach Sheni is a right that he's supposed to learn 30 days before. The Shulchan protests, and he says, since we're discussing halachas Pesach Rishon, so now we're going to, but you don't have a right that if you're in the middle of Ador, a week before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you've got a mitzvah to learn halachas Pesach. So Gemara says, so my time the Shulchan Gamliel. That's referring to Pashas Boy. In Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Umazel Pesach. Shnei Chodesh Hashem Lachem Rosh Chodashim. Uksiv Davo Kol Adas Yisrael Lemoy. Ve'Esol Chodesh Hashem Yicholem Yisrael Beisov. So going on Rosh Chodesh, he tells them that on the 10th you should go and collect a sheep, and then on the 14th you should shecht it. So you see 2 weeks. How do we know that we're discussing that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to them on the Rosh Chodesh? Maybe you speak to them on the 4th or the 5th. And that's a very difficult Gemara, because it's clear from the pasuk there that Moshe Rabbeinu started off at least Rosh Chodesh, because he says, and he's speaking about halachas Rosh Chodesh. So, Tais already discussed it. It says maybe there was a pause in Moshe Rabbeinu's words, big doichet. He started off speaking about Rosh Chodesh, then he stopped for a few days, and then he continued the halachas of Pesach 3-4 days later. There's a very interesting Chiyus. He asks the question, why did one say 4th, 5th? Why did one not just say maybe it was the 2nd or the 3rd? You don't need to come to the 4th. If Moshe Gamliel is trying to learn 2 weeks, even if it was only 2 days later, you've not got 2 weeks. Why I say 4th, 5th? Because he says if you work it out, the 2nd and the 3rd of that year, the 2nd was a Friday, the 3rd was a Shabbos. And it's unlikely that Moshe Rabbeinu on a Friday or a Shabbos will start teaching them Halachas Pesach because the person's preparing for Shabbos. And that's how we're going to move on. So if the Gemara says it's only the 4th or the 5th, it's very interesting. If you work it out, we had it in more Shabbos, Daf Beches. If you worked out the calendar that year, it was the 2nd and 3rd was a Friday Shabbos. So Moshe says maybe it was the 4th or 5th. The Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu on the 2nd year in the 1st month. And he told them to do Rosh Pesach on its time, which is the 14th. So you see that Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu 2 weeks before. Maybe it was the 4th or the 5th koi. We do Xeva Shava, Xevach B'Midbar Sinai, Xevach also V'Davar Hashem Moshe B'Midbar Sinai B'Moed Bech B'Chodesh Hasheni. It's Xeva Shava Malalam B'Rosh Chodesh Afkam B'Rosh Chodesh. It's a Xeva Shava to tell us that Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu on Rosh Chodesh, and since it's Xeva Shava, Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu on Rosh Chodesh. Now, it comes out that the pasuk Ba'aloischa is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and the pasuk right at the beginning of Bamidbar is Rosh Chodesh Iyar. If you look at it in the pasuk, which is the wrong way around, it means Bamidbar starts off Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to count Kaisar, and then in the beginning and Ba'aloischa, which is 3 parashas later, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Kaisar to do Korban Pesach when on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So after 3 parashas, we've gone back a month. First, we should say that Parsha of Ba'aloischa then Bamidbar. The Torah does not have no order. And the Ramban writes, doesn't mean there's no order at all. There's a logic to it. There's a reason to it, because there's a reason why the Torah changes the order. But what the law means is it's not necessarily chronological. Sometimes it's not chronological. But of course, there's a reason why that pasuk is before, because this is only in 2 separate topics. In one particular topic, one paragraph, what comes first. No. There's a rule, prat and prat or klal. What's the difference? If you have a prat is a detail, then a klal. So what we do is we say prat or klal. The klal comes to include everything. If I say to you, Reuben should go to play, Let's say the whole class should go to play. Obviously, I mean the class should go to play. If I say the class should go to play, and then I say Reuven should go to play, what I mean is when I meant the class, I only meant Reuven and Shimon, let's say. I only meant those people, no more. So now if you're going to say Mukta Mocha Torah, so you never know if it's a Klal or Prat or Prat or Klal. How would you possibly know such a thing? The whole basis of Klal and Prat is a rule, a general rule and a detail. You have to know which one comes first to know which one it is.
But you only say Klal and Prat within one paragraph.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask in a minute. Very good. So the Gemara says in one paragraph, you have to say it's in order. Because if you don't say it's in order, how are you ever going to have Klal or Prat or Prat or Klal? You'll never know, is it a detail than a general rule or a general rule than a detail? Says the Gemara. Maybe it's the other way around. The rule adds to the detail. Maybe it's the other way around too. By two topics as well, you're going to have the same problem as Moshe points out. How can you have a kalupat? Maybe it's the wrong way around. According to the man Doma, that indeed we do not say kalupat if it's in two different parshas. It's good. Even according to the Mandoma, we do say kalupfat, it's only if it's within one topic. It can be a bit far away, but it has to be within one topic. But if it's in two separate topics, then we never say kalupfat because of the fact that we don't know mukta mochabater, we don't know which around it's written, and the whole logic of kalupfat is you have a detail and a general rule, or general rule and a detail. You need to know which one came first, which one came second, to know which one is the deciding factor. And since we're going to say that we're going to stop over here. We're always on Friday, finish early. And it's actually a whole new topic over here, a very interesting topic. Okay, we managed to get the Shkoyach for coming. It's a very chazuk. Shkoyach. Have a very, very good Shabbos.
21 minutes.
How much?
21.
Oh, wow.
Shkoyach. Shabbos.
It's a bit less.
Shabbos, but Shabbos.
Yeah. So you should 8 minutes.
He does 20 minutes, a whole daf every day. And that's a whole daf.
Hamburger.
Yes.